Did you ever see a crazed, screaming toddler suddenly adopt happy, flawless, calm cooperation because it got yelled at? Agitation generally just causes more agitation. Calmly asking questions and really listening to the answers, then greeting those answers with compassion and speaking lovingly with reassurances of safety is the best path for de-escalation. Whether we're talking about toddlers or a human of any age in crisis or your own brain. Hello again, folks. I'm picking up where I left off after the previous video, which was Brain Talk 4A. This is 4B. So I'll condense my usual intro. I'm glad you're here. I'm Alison with Face Squared Music. I found astounding healing on multiple fronts with self-directed, Christ-centered neuroplasticity. So now I'm helping others like you who wish to do the same. But before I get to Brain Talk tip number 5, I want to share some thoughts I had recently. They came as I was watching a terrific video by Dr. Howard Schubiner, I recommend him highly, on pain reprocessing therapy, or PRT. He said something I'd heard before, but it just really jumped out at me this time. He said, your brain doesn't speak English. In other words, your brain is not going to whisper, send you an email, text, letter, or thought bubble with specific words of concern if it really wants to get your attention. Your brain communicates with you by causing physical sensations and reactions, aka symptoms, in your body. That is what you get on the receiving end of brain talk, not actual words. Reiterating that your brain doesn't speak English really applies in what I'm putting out here for you in this set of videos. Your brain's methods of communicating can be way fun if the message is, oh boy, my crush is looking at me and smiling, and your stomach explodes in butterflies. Or if the message is waves of goosebumps while you're listening to a beautiful song. Yes. Thank you, brain. You so rock. But it's not so fun if your brain believes you're in danger and need to be protected, even if you're not and don't. And as we've discussed previously, it can get very creative and insistent in getting your attention, especially if it has decided either A, you've been ignoring it long enough, or B, your hyper-focused, fearful responses to its previous messages of urgency convince it that it is totally doing the right thing, raising the alarm, and should keep doing that. Remember, your limbic brain, which has the power to create a very long list of uncomfortable and very real symptoms in your body, is basically an overactive 3-year-old with a negativity bias. If it gets loud and agitated in the symptoms it creates, it firmly believes it has good reasons, possibly rooted in some traumatic memories of scary things that hurt you back in the day, which makes all of this more understandable and, again, not your fault. And it deepens your brain's belief that it needs to be in charge in order to protect you. It takes that self-appointed role very seriously, functioning in a way that assumes a monster is around every corner, because it believes that's the only sure way to avoid all potential future monsters. With that understanding, perhaps it's easier to see and accept that you can't always trust the very real symptoms your brain creates. It's an overexcited, underinformed toddler that forgot how to use its words. So it feels it has to scream at you through your body to warn you about non-existent monsters. Here's my final thought on all of that. Responding to yelling with yelling seldom helps the situation, does it? Did you ever see a crazed, screaming toddler suddenly adopt happy, flawless, calm cooperation because it got yelled at? Agitation generally just causes more agitation. Calmly asking questions and really listening to the answers, then greeting those answers with compassion and speaking lovingly with reassurances of safety is the best path for de-escalation. Whether we're talking about toddlers or a human of any age in crisis or your own brain. And in case you hadn't figured it out, what I just described is brain rewiring in a nutshell. So let's learn more about creating an atmosphere of de-escalation with your purposeful brain talk. But first, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. It's important what you focus on because your brain is listening. Brain talk tip number 5, ruminating on the past versus envisioning a better future. Ruminating. Does that singular word have a positive or a negative connotation for you? I think it can go both ways. I mean, you can ruminate on your blessings, which I highly recommend. However, in the world of brain rewiring, ruminating usually refers to overthinking and overanalyzing, generally for way too long, about things you feel bad about in your past, which usually leads to being worried about and hyper-focused on bad things that might happen in your future. Then dwelling on those things and the feelings that go with them again and again and again. Remember how that compares to creating and then deepening undesirable ruts in the road of your mind? Neurons that fire together, wire together, and make ruts together. What if instead you pondered, explored, and imagined possibilities of what could happen if things went really well in your life? And please know, I'm not just talking about buying a cool car that you'd love to drive. I'm talking about circumstances of your life, your health and well-being. If you haven't seen Inside Out 2 yet, please go. I'm going to make bazillions of videos about how great that movie is and all the things that we could learn from it. But one of the big things about that movie that I love is the scene of the brain focusing on all these negative thoughts that might happen versus, whoa, what if we focus on great things that might happen? And that's what I'm talking about here. It's a great scene in a great movie. So what if you learned to help yourself feel really excited and hopeful about things like being able to return to full physical activity, interacting beautifully with loved ones because you've all employed forgiveness and compassion to heal fractured relationships, eating whatever you want, going wherever you want to go, and achieving some of your most cherished lifelong goals. So when was the last time you really talked to your brain in hopeful terms about things like that? None of the good stuff that you want to happen in your life can ever happen if you don't think about it first. Thinking about it and feeling good feelings about it, those are the first steps in making it reality. Now, sure, I understand. Everyone can also think of reasons such and such probably won't happen. How nice that you can let go of doing that. You don't have to do that. You can choose to not do that. Especially because you'll be surprised how many of those obstacles you thought were there can literally melt away once you harness the skill and habit of envisioning a wonderful future for yourself. The energy of optimism has a way of attracting solutions. The energy of optimism has a way of attracting solutions. And the wheels of your brain will eventually forget those old ruts that it used to be stuck in because it's so happy with the new, smooth, sunny, and picturesque route it has learned to take instead on great roads. So here's a little scripture that should help. Matthew 17:20. For verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Nothing shall be impossible unto you. Now, we don't have the need in our lives to move real mountains. Mount Rainier needs to stay right where it's at. However, we have mountains in our lives, right? Big things that seem like insurmountable obstacles. Looking to the future optimistically is really a form of exercising faith, of God telling you that you can move a mountain. Add to that scripture all the scriptures there are of knock and it shall be open. And the main message here is inescapable. God wants to bless you with good things. He wants you to see your own empowerment in being able to exercise faith and play a role in manifesting good things. He can't help us with that if we blocked out those awesome future possibilities by putting more faith in our doubts than we put in him and in ourselves. Learning how to focus on faith over doubt is a process for sure. And we all know it won't happen all at once, but small efforts over time can and will yield great results. In 2018, when I started brain rewiring, I made a little stack of cards. Oops, brought them out just for you. Oops, here we go. Okay, that's not all of them, but some of them. I wrote things down on them that I wanted to happen in the future. In my rewiring sessions, I learned how to really envision them one by one, talking each one through out loud as if it was happening right now. I described them in great loving detail, along with my feelings of joy associated with those details experienced with my senses. At the time, I was still working on coming out of a dark place with many serious physical, mental, and emotional challenges. But nevertheless, I got really good at this. Then, while I was using this practice mainly to summon joy, which happened, and heal my brain and body with great healing chemicals produced by joy, which happened, many of the things written on those cards actually came to pass. Total bonus. For instance, a loved one I hadn't talked to in years reached out to me and reestablished contact after years of silence, and that was the day after I envisioned that future. My husband and I made an awesome music video with 3 of our grandchildren as a surprise gift for their parents, which is something I had envisioned doing. And I was able to sing all right and do pretty well after once having endured paralyzed vocal cords. I returned to the stage and danced in recital again after all the evidence telling me that those days were through. I attended a college graduation celebration for a former juvenile detention student who had once been a hopeless dropout. I went to dinner at a nice restaurant and ate multiple things that would have caused nasty, nasty reactions in the past. I made sure my order specifically included things that I had once envisioned: seafood fettuccine, clam chowder, sourdough bread with lots of butter, cheesecake for dessert. I was fine afterwards, and I slept fine. Just a few years before, that would have seemed impossible to me. I was once even visited, if you will, by an eagle. He didn't land on my arm or shoulder. That would have been really cool. But anyway, we were camping. It swooped down the river right across my field of view, not far from my face, right in front of me, while I was right in the middle of envisioning an eagle doing just that and envisioning myself soaring through my life. It was mind-blowing. It just like I'd never seen an eagle up there before at that place. Never. There it was right when I was thinking about it. So when I started that practice, I didn't think I could do it. Attempting it felt awkward and pointless, a little bit stupid, challenging, scary even. So I completely understand if you've been limited by fear, illness, or pain. Contemplating taking actual steps to bring to pass one of your dreams, one of your hopes, even if it's just in your mind, might feel risky. Just like the word ruminate, the word risky or risk doesn't have to carry a negative connotation. Now, I understand jumping out of an airplane with a parachute packed by a 12-year-old who has no training in packing parachutes. That's not a risk I recommend. Neither is eating something out of the fridge with an expiration date of 3 to 4 years ago. But the truth is, taking risks can be an awesome thing. Just about any example of a great success in the world began by someone taking a risk, going for it. And that risk was always preceded by that person envisioning it happening with a wonderful outcome. This is a great place to make the point that if your limbic brain is alarmed at you taking a risk it doesn't think you should, something it doesn't like, such as going to a social event with people you've never met, walking down the driveway and back after previously struggling to just walk to the kitchen, whatever it is, it's likely to amp up your symptoms or create brand new symptoms because it feels it must stop you. This is something called the symptom imperative. Basically means your brain is yelling at you more loudly now. And it's actually a sign you're on the right track. And it happens to most everyone doing this work. It's not fun, but it's a real thing. And it deserves a Faith Squared message, blog, video all its own someday. But in the meantime, all of that stuff harkens back to my previous advice to just take it slowly with lots of self-reassurance and a willingness to greet the inevitable roadblocks and detours with confidence that they will pass. It's a whole lot easier to do that first here than in reality. But if you practiced it here first and seen it through to the joyful conclusion, I promise that then if you reach a point, when you reach a point that it's something that you can take action for, ooh, what a head start you have. So, Faith Squared music, song about all that. By the time you listen to this video, maybe it'll be available. Roadblocks and detours, never a straight shot, but let's not think about that now. Okay, I want to suggest that if you do an envisioning meditation like this about taking a positive risk, it's probably a good thing to do it in the light of day, or at least in a cheerful, well-lighted room. Do what you can to be surrounded by sights, sounds, smells, etc., that feed optimism and hope, especially if you're in the early stages of your journey. And we're talking music. Tim Janis is the champion. His music has given me so many spiritual experiences while I was doing this kind of meditation and envisioning. It's like he wrote it for me. Now, because if you tackle this stuff in the darkness of night, especially if you're in bed and you're fighting the rumination thing, anxiety, insomnia, that's not maybe the best mix. I mean, in certain circumstances, it's okay to stack the deck in your favor. If you can do it and do it well, fine. But in the beginning, it might be pretty tough. So if you do want to do something in the middle of the night to counteract the midnight rumination thing and the effect that it's having on you, here are some ideas. Deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, slow breathing. Somebody might have made a video about that recently. Okay, could have been me. All right. You could listen to soothing music, read some comforting scriptures, do all three of those things at the same time. That's a great idea. You could be listening to inspiring talks and messages of hope, praying, working on a word puzzle. That's one of my favorites. Write a poem about a great memory or something you love. You could recite hymn lyrics that you have memorized. Make a list of certain things that you're grateful for in categories or whatever. Your list of tools can be even longer, especially if you use your imagination and ask for help from the man upstairs. And I've got lots of stuff on my website, faith-squared.com. So often, people feel like they are just victims of dark ruminating thoughts and simply can't help it. Well, maybe to start with, when a thought or feeling first comes to you, but you can process, reframe, redirect, and do so well with purpose, because endlessly focusing on them in despair just gives them more power over you. Not to mention it releases chemicals in your body that increase inflammation. It might even be helpful to use those midnight hours to process emotions that accompany your ruminations with some expressive writing, as in the song, That's Okay, It's All Right. Write it down, get it out, tear it up and toss it. And if you get derailed in any of those efforts, just try again. Don't beat yourself up. It takes practice, like anything. You're not going to get it all right the first time. It's okay. Try. It's so doable. I know because I did it. All that stuff I just shared with you, happily envisioning the future, and also learning to redirect ruminating thoughts, virtually eliminated my long sleepless nights of self-pity and dark thoughts. And I had many of them over years. I figured it out, and it changed everything. Isaiah 43:18, coupled with Romans 8:6. Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. What kind of things would the Spirit like you to focus on? That's not hard. Proverbs 12:25, anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. You don't have to reserve your kind words for others. You can direct some at yourself. You should. Maybe somebody should write a song about that. Maybe somebody did. Hebrews 12:2. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and set down at the right hand of the throne of God. Wow, that phrase, did you get it? I tried to emphasize it. The ultimate example of how looking forward to a joyful future, a joyful outcome, provided the needed courage and strength to get through an excruciating challenge, the most excruciating suffering ever, and arrive at the desired outcome that had been joyfully envisioned. Christ is the best example of everything, anything that we might face. So, what joyful brain talk are you going to set before yourself? Brain talk tip number 6. Overachieving perfectionism is not recommended. If I'm smiling extra large, it's because the first time I said brain talk tick. Okay. Brain talk tip number 6. Okay, anyway, always and never are words one must utter carefully. Never say never, right? So with that in mind, I will state that people who have limbic system dysregulation are often type A personalities, as in folks who push themselves to achieve, be the best, rescue others, put a lot on their plates, do a lot of fixing, push through again and again when their body says they need to take a breather, and maybe even worry that people won't like them if they don't excel at everything. They're really and truly more likely to get dysregulated, as in limbic system dysregulation. I've listened to hundreds of success stories, and it really is a common theme. And I confess, maybe I have fallen into that category. I'm sure greater minds than mine can explain why this is, but for the sake of brevity, let's just accept it as a given that overachievers can sometimes overachieve themselves into getting pretty dang sick. Consider the messages you are likely sending your brain if your perfectionism and or workaholicness is calling the shots. For instance, my value must lie in how I measure up in the eyes of others, as opposed to being just valued for who I am. If I have to work this hard to prove my worth, it must mean I'm basically just not good enough. Checking items off my to-do list seems more important than taking care of myself, as in things and accomplishments are more valuable than I am. I don't have time for uncomfortable emotions. They must be dangerous. And besides, they just slow me down. I've got to go, go, go. It's not hard to figure out the long-term effects that those kinds of messages might have on the brain. Burnout comes to mind, of course. An awful lot of people who have stories to tell about how they ended up with chronic illness, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, etc., talk about how they just pushed and pushed and pushed until they hit the wall one day. And instead of bouncing back this time, they just got sicker and sicker. It's true that sometimes our own realistic expectations of ourselves just might convince the brain we need to be protected from ourselves. Solid self-care practices that include messages of worth and safety while creating better work-play balance can definitely rewire the brain in wonderful ways, miraculous ways. If you've been an overdoer, make it a practice to say and do things that send your brain messages like this. I am good enough just as I am, and I don't need to prove myself to the world to feel or be valued. Life is meant to be enjoyed. It's not a competition where the one with the most accomplishments, accolades, or prizes wins. I am worthy and deserving of love, and my well-being is more important than my to-do list. I'm entitled to the whole spectrum of human emotions, and I'll be healthier and happier if I allow myself to feel, experience, and learn from mine. That takes time and effort, but it's important, and I'm worth it. Now, that last item there is a fine example of a situation where a great therapist could make a significant difference, and also where great affirmations could make a great difference. So I've got some on the website. Oh, faith-squared.com. So let's end this with a few scriptures. John 1:2. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. Those things going together. Isn't that awesome? Mark 6:31. And he said to them, come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while. Is that why retired people go to Arizona? That could be like the state motto, right? The point is, we all need place and a time to rest away from the pressures of life. Luke 5:16. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Great example of seeking out stillness, slowing down, connecting with God, taking care of your health, prioritizing. This is some of the very best kinds of brain talk. Brain talk tip number 7. Media consumption matters. All right. It's time to think about the effects that your choices of movies, books, TV shows, games, websites, and music, etc., might be having on your brain. This can be a delicate issue because on one hand, I don't want anyone to feel that I've made myself into a almighty judge of some sort on what you can enjoy or can't enjoy. You know, this pointing accusatory finger thing. But on the other hand, I think I'd be doing a disservice to my listeners if I didn't spend some time on the subject because it's very relevant. For example, I recently learned of a widowed elderly woman who was lonely and unhappy, afraid to go out, afraid of crime, drug use and violence on the streets, natural disasters, rampant viruses, economic collapse, automobile accidents, political and corporate corruption, you name it. And this same woman watches almost nothing but the news all day long. Most news programs use sensationalism to increase ratings and therefore the amount of money they can charge for advertising dollars. Many stories are calculated to induce fear, and the thoughts, sensations, and emotions associated with you drinking all of that in can become addictive, even if it's not enjoyable. I'm sure all of you would counsel that woman to turn off the news and find something better to watch or do, right? Simple. However, not every example is going to be as obvious to figure out. And what might have negative consequences for person A might not affect person B in the same way at all. A lot of this depends on who you are, where you are in your life, and what your particular set of challenges might be. Actually, for myself, when I was going through my worst of my trauma, the therapist told me to stop watching the news. Great advice. I've never made a habit of watching it since then. Once in a while, I'll turn in to get one little story here, but after a while, I'm like, no, thank you. Okay, seek out the good news. It's there. Okay, so let me give you a few simple examples to ask yourself when deciding what kind of media to consume each day. 1, do the thoughts and feelings inspired by this choice make me healthier, happier, or smarter, or stronger, or more at peace? Or do they have an opposite effect? Sorry, I put that finger up too soon. Number 2, do I have to keep any of my choices a secret from anyone in my life? And if so, what effect is that having on my self-esteem and my relationship? 3, for the believers out there, would you be comfortable consuming this media if Jesus was sitting next to you? Now, it might be weird because maybe he can't imagine him being interested in the subject matter, but there's a difference between maybe some incongruity and actual shame, right? So let me reiterate. What kind of feelings and thoughts do these choices inspire? Do you feel good about that or not? Do you have to keep your choices a secret? And would you be comfortable having Jesus next to you? Now, honestly answering these questions will help you make better choices about what you're choosing to feed your heart, mind, and soul. For instance, if you've been traumatized by betrayal, then maybe watching movie after movie about betrayal and revenge is not going to help you heal. Might be fine for somebody else, but for you, think about it. If you've been injured by medical trauma, stop watching hospital dramas. Okay. Now, the other side of this is that there are choices that absolutely can and will help you heal. If I didn't believe that, you wouldn't be watching this video or any of my videos. This Faith Squared Music wouldn't exist. It exists and all that goes with it because I believe in the healing power of music and poetry, right? The lyrics. That power is multiplied when lyrics are created with intention that aligns with brain science and gospel principles given to us by a loving God. I mean, hence the name Faith Squared. multiplied by itself, right? It's all about the combined results being greater than just the added up sum of its parts. There are volumes of peer-reviewed, easy for me to say, I do get excited. There are volumes of peer-reviewed published studies about the beneficial effects of music and music therapy for a huge variety of illnesses and challenges. It straight up works, folks. The science is there. Hooray, what a blessing. So, have you listened to any Faith Squared music yesterday? Have you downloaded it so you could listen to it a lot? I do recommend it. There was a catchphrase that was popular years back relating to computers and the kind of results you get when you don't enter the data properly or you don't enter the right data. This is it. Garbage in, garbage out. G-I-G-O or GIGO. Garbage in, garbage out. Your results are only as good as your data. Man, oh man, this applies to our hearts, minds, and souls. The way we feel, think, speak, and act. All of that is affected by what we consume. I just feel like if you spend an hour with someone, you could be given examples of here's a set of 6 books, here's a set of 6 books, here's a set of 6 books, and Shakespeare or Jane Austen versus dime store trash versus whatever you want to call it. I guess I shouldn't have used a word to categorize something that someone might like, because again, it depends on the person, but you get what I'm saying. You feed yourself a certain amount of media. It shapes how you talk, think, speak, act. It really, really does. So, GIGO. Now, happily, it also applies the other way around, as in wisdom in, wisdom out. Like I just said, what books are you reading? Enlightenment in, enlightenment out. Why, whoa. E-I-E-O. That could be a song. Love and compassion in, love and compassion out. There are great movies, books, websites, television programs, songs that are full of wisdom and light and love and compassion and inspiration, and they're still good quality and entertaining. Seek and ye shall find. Please remember that just like sensationalistic news stories, there's a lot of stuff out there that is just flat not good for you, and it's addictive. Those two things generally go together, if you haven't noticed. Satan is too dang smart sometimes, right? Ooh, it's bad for them. I'll make it addictive. Thankfully, he doesn't have to have the last word. It may seem small and a small thing and laughable, but I was once addicted to a soap opera back in my 20s. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but it was a while ago. I finally found the strength to quit when I started dreaming about those people frequently. But that's not why I needed to quit. I needed to quit because watching that drama and trauma every day was taking me to a place where I was accepting really bad, immoral behavior as entertaining and normal, not helping me become my highest self. It also taught me that you can't trust life going well for any long period of time because doom and gloom, tragedy is going to strike. You can't enjoy it because it's not going to last, right? What a thing to teach our brains. My brain was being wired in a way that was not consistent with my values and standards, so I stopped and I turned it around. I know it's not easy to overcome addictions. That's the understatement of the century, and my little addiction is small potatoes compared to many addictions that people fight. Media, drugs, whatever. I don't profess to be an expert, but I know who is. God is an expert. He wants to help you be free of addiction. And he has inspired people with programs and procedures and tools that can help you find that kind of freedom with his help as well. There are places you can go, people you can talk to, things you can do to work miracles in your life, no matter what problems you're having, media or otherwise. Seek and ye shall find. I'm going to summarize a favorite Zig Ziglar quote before I do the scriptural reference, and it's really helped me. The chief cause of failure and unhappiness is trading what you want most for what you want right now. I think Weight Watchers actually used that for a while, and I think I put it on my fridge before because, boy, that applies to resisting temptation when you're trying to lose weight, right? But boy, it sure applies to the rest of life as well. Making choices to do things, engage in things, be with a person, compromise your standards just because it's going to feel good right now. It's what I want. But in the long term, it's not really what you want and know what you need. So I'm going to say it again. The chief cause of failure and unhappiness is trading what you want most for what you want right now. And if you want to binge watch a trashy show, why don't you think about, is this in harmony with my long-term goals? Is this going to hurt me or help me? What's a better choice I can make? Because I assure you there are better choices out there. If what you want is wholeness, happiness, and healing, you can learn to make media choices in harmony with shaping your desires into your reality. Ephesians 5, 8 through 13. For ye were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord. And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doth make manifest is light. Got to make a whole video about just that subject right there, light and the light of Christ. Romans 12, 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Be not conformed to this world and the media choices it offers. That was my little addition there. But be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. You align yourself and your choices in media and anything with what you really want in life and what you have learned to accept and embrace as God's will for you. Miracles, miracles, miracles. It could be yours for the taking. Brain talk tip number 8. Repetition of daily practices is a big deal. Repetition is really important. Repetition is really important. Repetition is really important. Did I mention repetition is important? It is true that some people are able to create healing through brain rewiring after a relatively short period of time, but I'm here to tell you they are the exceptions. For me personally, deciding that I was going to be one of those people who would be all better in a few weeks or maybe months absolutely messed me up. Instead of weeks or months, it took years, and my frustration about that derailing me certainly resulted in it taking more years than it otherwise would have. I slacked off on the repetition thing, and I paid a price. Repetition of what, you may ask? It might be an actual program you purchased that has you doing rounds or script or some kind of specific outline practice every day. I do recommend that. But mainly, I'm talking about the habits you develop of how you think, speak, feel, and act day in and day out. In other words, how you talk to your brain, react to your symptoms, employ daily gratitude practices, engage in meditation, say your affirmations, use improved body language, envision better future outcomes, or any of the other brain rewiring tools that are out there, whether you found them somewhere else or on faith-squared.com. Doing it right and doing it well, moving forward with hope, redirecting yourself as needed, doing it again and again and again and again. That's where the magic happens. That's the kind of repetition that makes the healing come alive. It probably took you years to get the way you are now. Quick fix is not realistic. Repetition and consistency over time. It's not going to work if you decide your brain rewiring is a part-time thing or something you're only going to do when you manage to get around to it. But please understand, as time goes by, you'll start to see benefits and actual changes that will provide additional motivation. Yes, returning or new symptoms might come along, which can actually be a good thing, by the way, good sign. But so will reasons to get excited when you can see that it's working. I have a personal story to tell that I think will deliver this message better than my usual admonitions and bullet points and blah, blah, blah. So one of the weird things that happened to me when I became really sick and found myself living inside intense fear and anxiety around the clock. I don't want to over exaggerate it and trigger people, but okay. One of the things that happened was that I stopped yawning for about 6 months. I was never relaxed enough to do it. I could not. I did not yawn. A yawn is like a signal to your brain, your body, that it's okay to find a place to settle down and sleep because you feel safe enough to do so. For that period of time, and I'm not saying it was exactly 6 months, it might have been a little more or a little less, I'm just guessing. Anyway, for that period of time, I felt so unsafe, my body could not yawn. Eventually, as I got better and took care of myself and made some progress, an occasional yawn would start to appear. It was a very cool surprise the first time it happened. Whoa, I must be getting better. I yawned, right? Then, when a little later I learned about neuroplasticity and started my brain rewiring practices, something remarkable happened. At least it felt remarkable to me. In the script that I followed in my personal practice, there was a place where I stopped to very intentionally relax my jaw, neck, and shoulders and take several deep breaths, diaphragmatic controlled breathing, while envisioning breathing in light from heaven and blowing out all the things I didn't want inside me anymore. Blow it out. Then I spoke words of love, reassurance, comfort, and safety to my limbic brain. All of those things went together in sequence, and I repeated them faithfully several times a day for months. After a while, something really interesting started to happen. As soon as I got to that place in the script, before I even started with the relaxing and the breathing, the speaking the words, I started to yawn, like big Olympic champion yawns, and totally unplanned, and kind of caught me off guard. Like it would happen whether I was tired or not. It didn't matter where I was. If I was doing this laying down, sitting up, outside in the car, I didn't do it in the car too much, but camping, whatever. And it's so funny, as I typed up the script to tell you about this, and I'm telling the story, the yawns came back. Hello, brain. You really got that down good, didn't you? My brain associated this part of my practice, my daily practice and repetition, with finally feeling safe. And it associated being able to yawn with finally feeling safe. Again, it didn't matter when, where, how. As long as I did this practice and I got to that point in the script, it cued the whole yawn thing every time. I didn't intentionally arrange this, folks, but it was as reliable as Old Faithful or Big Ben, whatever. It was a small thing, but to me, it was a wow. It was a wow. Other things happened with that repetition, and it helped me know I was on track. Really, really encouraging when you're looking for something to celebrate, right? Regardless of the roadblocks or detours or what you think might be a regression, these things are little shining lights, rays of hope at the ends of the tunnel, and I made the most of it. So here's some other examples. I reached a point where I could have a cookie without it inducing a panic attack and several nights of horrible sleep and all that went with that. Just a cookie. Simple things for other people to have a cookie, right? But for me, it was a big deal, and I couldn't just have a cookie or a brownie or a piece of cake for years. Bad things would happen, and then suddenly they didn't happen anymore. Well, I won't say suddenly, but after a while. I started having dreams at night where I asserted myself confidently and successfully against threats instead of getting so scared that I screamed or woke up or whatever it was. Like I asserted myself in my own safety and autonomy in my dreams. I started laughing and singing again spontaneously after not being able to do that for a very long time. And then there came a day where I realized I'd gone a whole day without thinking once about a symptom or trying to avoid a trigger. So cool. Repetition was key to that, coupled with faith in the process, faith in God, and faith in myself. And now, I want to take this opportunity to express some significant gratitude for a chance to tell all of that in this video, to repeat my story and share my success. Because for me, it's a wonderful reminder of how far I have come and what a blessing it is to share with you that I found the empowerment to make that happen. I didn't have to wait for some medical professional or therapist or magic formula or something to fix it. I became the master of my destiny and figured out how to talk to my brain. I am so far past those years of suffering, it almost feels like it happened to a different person. Excuse me for getting emotional, but it's an amazing thing and feels like my own personal miracle. And sometimes I forget how wonderful and magical it is and how grateful I am for it. So I'm thankful for my transformation, for being able to talk about it. And I hope that I never stop expressing gratitude for my miraculous brain rewiring experience. In Psalm 136, the phrase, "For his mercy endureth forever," is repeated in every single one of the 26 verses. That psalmist must have understood the power of repetition in delivering an important message. For his mercy endureth forever. Within the Old and New Testaments, there are at least 100 scriptures or sets of scriptures with the message of seek and you will find, knock and it will be open. The Lord and his messengers must have thought we needed that repetition. Proverbs 4:23, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. By the way, did you know that there are specific cells within the human heart that have the ability to store memories? Not exactly like brain cells, but they function in very similar ways. So did you realize that when you're rewiring your brain, you're also rewiring your heart? And replacing bad memories with good, bad emotions with good? So I'll repeat that last scripture once more, and remember, repetition is what we're talking about here. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Okay, thank you for listening. More to come. I'm only 2/3 of the way through my brain talk agenda here. I hope by now you've subscribed, and I hope by now you've subscribed, and I hope by now you've subscribed. So don't forget our website, faith-squared.com. 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 Okay. Brain talk. It's great. And I repeat, it's great.